The CyberHub Engage podcast is brought to you by CyberHub Summit. CyberHub Summit is hosting its second annual cybersecurity conference in Atlanta, Georgia on October 10th at the City Winery, featuring live cyber war games. Find out more at cyberhubsummit.com. Hey everyone, welcome to the CyberHub Engage podcast. My name is James Azar and I am your host. Thanks for tuning in to another exciting episode. We are going to be talking about the successful relationship between a CIO and a CISO, and I've got a very, very, very special guest with us today. And we're going to be talking a little bit about how we took a blue-collar company tech in 4 years, which is unprecedented. I mean, when I did my research on SiteOne landscape, I was going like, wow. So you talk about a blue collar, you wouldn't understand why they need technology outside of point of sale, to understanding that it's now a tech company for tech ruled, tech dominated almost in that aspect. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you're tuned in, make sure to stay through. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at CyberHub Engage. You can follow me on Twitter, James_Azar1. And I want to welcome our guest, the CISO of SiteOne Landscape, Mr. David Black. How's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me.
So are you related to Doug?
I'm not. He tends to tell people that we are, and it confuses everyone in the company, but we're not related. I wish we were. He's a nice guy.
It would also give you a little bit better job security.
Yeah, a little more clout when I want to get
Hey, Doug, I need a vacation. Taking 3 weeks off, and I'm going to south of France.
That would be nice.
Perfect. So, I spoke, you and I just met now, and I spoke with your CIO, Sean, who was, named as one of the, by Atlanta Business Chronicles as one of the top CIOs in the state of Georgia. He was, I think, number 3, and he was on the finalist list, and yeah. I don't know when the gala is, but
it's coming up soon.
That's for those listening. If you're not from Georgia, this isn't something the paper does to promote the paper. This is peer voted. The CIO aspect of it is peer voted, peer nominated, and so it's very impressive. And SiteOne has a very impressive background to begin with, because you guys are a landscaping wholesaler.
We sell dirt and trees.
So tell me about that a little bit. Why do you have a CISO? Because, technically, shouldn't you guys just be worried about PCI and that's it?
I think normally so. It was the desire of the company to go public that really brought about the idea we need more for security. We need a CISO. Sarbanes-Oxley is going to apply, and we'll be more in the press, and we really want to make sure that we don't suffer as being already a leader in the industry, because it's a very fragmented industry.
Right.
They wanted to make sure that as we're working our way even further up to the top, we don't stumble, have an accident, have an incident, have an attack that would end up setting us back years in our plans and our reputation.
Well, you guys have done some really cool things in a very, very short period of time. One of which is you guys have had over 30 acquisitions in the last 4 years. And I'm sure as a CISO, that is a pain, because there's a lot of due diligence on your end and system integrations.
Yeah, for us, it's in some ways on the security side, it's nice, because the model is, if you think back to the days of Star Trek, the Borg.
Uh-huh.
So literally, we're going to take whatever they have, and they're going to become us. And in some cases, it could take up to a year to get that done, and that's really where the security side comes in, because you're kind of managing both. And literally, we have 2 to 3 acquisitions going at a single time. So we could have 2 or 3 different separate companies that we're managing and allowing to connect to us. And we have to make sure that the security is there to protect our existing, corporate offices, as well as all of our locations, while we're still protecting the guys we just acquired that we're learning about.
What's the process of security when acquiring a company? Are you guys consulted with before the acquisition, or are you guys brought on after?
We have kind of a combination. So I'd say this has been new for the past probably 1.5 to 2 years.
Uh-huh.
Originally, when I first started, it was you just took people from IT and sent them out to learn, and we didn't have a dedicated IT acquisitions team.
Okay.
For the past year and a half to 2 years, we've had a dedicated team with a director, and it's much more organized and formal. I mean, it's part of our business model for growth. And so they dedicated the resources to it, and part of what they do is get the questions answered for us so that we can stay focused at corporate on the security and the other projects we have rolling out, and then they provide that information to us, and we can make decisions based on that affect how we implement them, how we integrate them. I shouldn't say integrate, how we move them to our systems, because at the end of the day, it really is. They move to our point of sale. A lot of the companies that we're acquiring, we have a mix. Some have one location. It's literally a family-owned operation that's been there for 20 years, and he's ready to retire, and he sells to us. And his books may have been on paper, literally. We've had acquisitions that still use paper ledgers.
I'm all too familiar with that. Yes.
A lot of them will be using QuickBooks or something like that. And then you'll do one like with Atlantic Irrigation that we recently announced. They've over 30 locations in U.S. and Canada. They're massive. They have their own data centers, their own WAN. And so to integrate those and move those over to us is a large project that will take us. We break it down into chunks and do areas and regions at a time. And within 9 to 12 months, we have them fully over to our systems.
I mean, part of that is, managing that whole, acquisition piece, integration, and then training, correct? I mean, getting people to understand, the new kind of culture, right? Because, like you said, you can acquire someone who's been doing it for 20, 30 years. It's a, family-run business. The dad and maybe the kids help out, and, a few, working hands on the place. And, really, like you said, everything's on pen and paper. Then comes a corporation, and, Hollywood does an exaggeration of, losing America and, becoming all, selling out. But, I mean, you guys are a company that really deals with that. How is that working out in your role of, trying to educate them on security? Because now all of a sudden, it's more emails, it's more, it's a bit
one of our
more
biggest
complex.
Challenges. And that was when I was interviewing. One of the things they kept challenging me with in the questions is, how are you going to do security awareness and training for such a distributed organization? And you can't have these guys for an hour at a time. Right? They're busy we open at 7 to 7:30 in the morning and close at 4 to 4:30. So we're really B2B, we're not B2C.
Right.
And they're already getting communications from legal, from HR, from finance, from accounting, and all these other communications. So security just piles on top of that. And if you spend time at one of our locations, you'll see that literally before the customers come in, they get there early and they start getting loads ready, and they know customers are going to pull up. And the idea is we want our customers in and out as fast as possible, because if they're not on the job site, they're not making money.
Right.
And if we're slow, they're going to go somewhere else. And so the challenge was, how do you take, which historically everywhere I've ever worked, it's been you sit for an hour and you do your security awareness training, 8 times at one location to get everybody in, and then 10 times at the bigger location. And we couldn't do that model. So we switched to a model called adaptive security awareness, where you literally take a quiz when we start the training. And based on how well you do on the quiz, you get assigned modules of the training. So if you do well, you could do 10 minutes and you're done. If you do poorly, it could be an hour and a half.
Is it online?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you guys do physical trainings? Do you, as CISO, do you worry about not doing physical trainings?
Physical meaning being in person?
In person.
No, I'll do that at the corporate office. But for the field, we have about 549 locations now.
Oh, wow.
When I started, it was barely 300, and that was 3 years ago. So we've almost doubled in size since I've been there. So at corporate, we'll do departmental training, where we go over a little bit different, where we do have piggybacking and other things. You have to have your badge. But for the branches specifically, it's the adaptive training, where it saved us tens of thousands of man hours by doing the adaptive quiz, so that they really only get trained on what they don't know, what they missed on the quiz.
Do you feel like that properly evaluates someone's position or knowledge on cybersecurity?
So far, I feel it has, because before, when I first came on board, we had ransomware.
Right.
Thankfully, we had good infrastructure. We just deleted the files, restored them back up, and we were good. But we had a lot more incidents before we started doing the adaptive training, and we actually had the metrics that we could share all the way up to the board of directors, letting them know that the investment we made in this adaptive training is paying off, because the number of security incidents went significantly down.
How often are you in communication with the board? Are you part of the quarterly meetings or so forth, or?
Usually it's 1 or 2 quarters a year I'll get to attend, and it's the audit committee, which interestingly enough, the last one I went to, the entire board came to it. They didn't have any other sessions scheduled at the same time. So the whole board showed up because they were interested in the audit committee meeting and in information security. And I did a presentation on our current state, what we presented the year before, the work we had done, and then what our biggest risks are going into the future and how we're going to mitigate those.
You know, you kind of, your organization is B2B, but it's very, very wide. You guys have a lot of different roles. You guys have obviously, you know, your retail locations, which have their own challenges with, you know, the POS systems, obviously. But then you've got your field reps and you have your various offices across different parts of the country. How does all of that fit? And what kind of, you know, steps do you take as a CISO to ensure that, you know, they're all kind of still adhering to security?
Well, the nice thing is, you know, we're a large company when you look at how many locations we have, but we're really a small company when you look at the technology footprint. We've done a lot to optimize technology since Sean came on board. And, you know, before Sean, we would have system outages and incidents that would affect all branches or some branches every day. There were a lot of issues and challenges. We leverage Citrix and thin clients. So when you think about our locations, we call branches. As a B2B, you call it a branch. If you're retail, you call it a store. We call it a branch, and they are all using thin clients that are write protected. So as a user at one of our branches, you can't change the operating system. You can't change the settings. There's nothing really you can do that when you reboot it, it's going to come back to what it was before you ever logged on to it. So it reduces our risk and our exposure of the risk that end users have. Now, end users are always going to be the biggest risk. They're your best asset, but they can also be your highest risk, which is where the training comes in. And for us having the standards and making the infrastructure common everywhere that we go, we're able to know what our risk and exposures are and, you know, where those are coming from. I mean, one of the simplest things we did, one of the first things we did was logarithm as a SIM and piping everything to it. And my team spends their day threat hunting. You know, we have alerts that are set up, but they're also looking for, is anyone doing anything crazy at any of our locations? And, you know, you'll see things when the Masters kick up. Golf is a huge part of our business.
Right.
Our agronomic side with the Let's Go brand. It's very critical and important to us. And so all the guys at the branches want to watch the Masters when it comes on. And so you see bandwidth, you see other things, and then we'll end up having to throttle or block depending on, you know, the situation.
No PGA, guys. None.
And they just want to see, they're not watching the golf necessarily, they're looking at how cool the course looks because it's our chemicals that make it look so good.
Right. I mean, I was at the Masters this year in Augusta, and it was my first time there. And it's like, you know, it's almost like going to the Super Bowl. Yeah. Right? I mean, if you just understand the gravity of this, only it's more civil, like there's no fights. Right? Like, you ever go to a football game, there's always that one drunk guy talking smack. Like, no one's talking smack at golf. They're all wasted, but no one's talking. They're all just really nice drunks. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, they don't want to get banned for life.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to get banned. I mean, I wish like more people worried about that. You know, like the Mercedes-Benz. Now I can't call it the Georgia Dome anymore. Yeah. But Mercedes-Benz, because, you know, they kind of go crazy. But, you know, Sean was telling me, and Sean Kramer is the CIO for SiteOne, and I've spoken to Sean a few times, and he was supposed to possibly join us today. Unfortunately, he's canceled on me. That's 2 times, Sean. So when you listen to this, that's 2 times. And so time number 3 is no cancellation, Sean.
Just show up at his office.
I'm going to just show up I'm going to show up to the office with the recorder and a microphone and just be like, sir, would you like to explain why you didn't show up to our scheduled interviews? Where's your PR team here? We'd like to talk to them about, you know, your commitment to kidding. But you were brought on and you had to build a security team from scratch. There was nothing there pretty much. Where'd you get started? I mean, because that's most of the CISO's challenges is the first 90 days, right? Like, definitely. It's almost like the president. You're looking at it, you go, all right, we've got North Korea, Syria, Iran, right? The Germans.
Yeah, and the nice thing for me was John Deere started the company, 14 years ago,
right,
by acquiring two professional landscape firms, one here in Roswell, right down the street at one of our locations. It's literally 2 miles from here, and another one up in Troy, Michigan, and they built it from that. And so when I started, everything security was based on John Deere standards. So the policy that I had to read, the the code of business conduct, all the things that I went through as a new hire were John Deere. And so what we had to do is take John Deere and kind of figure out, from one of the world's largest manufacturing firms in the world, how do we change all this to be SiteOne and what we need going forward. So originally we tried to take it and tweak it. And then we're like, forget it. We just got to delete it, start over. And so from a policy, we started with policy, what makes sense for SiteOne based on our business and what we do, and went on into procedures, looked at the tools that we had. I'll say the nice thing was we were never integrated with John Deere when you think of the infrastructure. So the data centers were totally separate. We always had our own separate data centers, our own infrastructure. So a certain amount of basic security had to be there. We had firewalls.
Right.
We had VPN for remote access. But that was about it. Literally those two things. The service desk that managed all of our branches and all the associates are the same ones that would create users, delete users. A couple of network engineers, a couple of server administrators, the bare bones. So it was taking a look at that and then taking a look at, okay, as a company, we sell dirt and trees, but we do have credit card data, and we're going to go public. So I used those two as the foundation for everything that we were going to make as a requirement. Got to have, we can't survive without doing these things. But everybody knows in security that you can be compliant with PCI and Sarbanes-Oxley and still have massive gaps in your security, right? and huge exposures. So we just started with Sarbanes-Oxley, PCI, and then we looked and evaluated what are the other gaps, what are the other risks. And I ended up partnering with a tool. It was a company that Sean actually signed up with before I started called Securus. It's up in Michigan. And they're mainly Michigan-based. They're starting to expand, but they had created a tool where you could put your objectives or your requirements into this tool, and you could base it on any of the frameworks that are out there. And the nice part for me is they were willing to work with us and kind of combine several things into one. And it uses a capability maturity model. So, trying to get to a 5 from a 0 or a 1. And the first time we scored pretty low. And literally every quarter we met with them, and quarter over quarter we improved our results. And we had a target that we had presented to the board of directors that was our target to get to by a certain date. And we were very close to it because, honestly, the executives supported everything we were doing. They knew we needed to do it. It wasn't a huge challenge if you needed the funding to do it because, again, they knew we were kind of starting with nothing but basic firewalls. And while they're not technology focused,
right? Because you guys are like blue collar,
yeah,
right? I mean, your executives. I mean, I was reading Doug, your CEO's portfolio. I mean, the guy was in the Army for a while. I mean, that's they're not exactly the tech savvy. We were talking about earlier in terms of a board.
I think the beauty for him is he learned through his experiences how valuable technology was. Now, we're not a technology company because we're not making software, selling software or hardware, but obviously we can't exist without technology. And the better our technology, the better we serve our customers. And the happier they are, the better we're going to be.
Well, I mean, it's SiteOne to me, when I read kind of like your portfolio, and I mean, again, no disrespect to Doug, he was not only an Army engineering officer, but the guy was at West Point as well. So props.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, are you sure you're not related?
I wish. I wish I had some of his smarts.
But there is a key thing in understanding how vital security is for a company, especially, people look at it, and unfortunately you may experience this on your own, dealing with, different vendors and whatnot. Well, we're, all we do is we bring you to dirt, we're not, we don't need technology. And you go, yeah, you kind of do, man. Everyone today has to be focused on technology. And so it's a definite challenge. I mean, when you're evaluating technologies, right? And as you were building having a brain fart today. I started keto yesterday, so I had to explain this.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm drinking this kind of fat water, trying to restore my my brain function because I'm going through the sugar withdrawals.
That's rough.
Yeah, it is rough. But I'm trying to stay alive.
So, it's worth it.
Yeah, I want to live. Darn it, I was 180 pounds when I joined the service, and now I'm 250. I'm like, okay, time to fix that. Mm-hmm. You've let yourself go. Right. So, when you were starting to build and what you were just explaining, hey, we didn't have anything but firewalls. What kind of framework did you look at? How did you evaluate technologies that fit within the framework? Why specifically did you choose that framework? A lot of questions, but
Yeah, and honestly, we didn't adopt a single framework. There's so many out there,
right.
And most everyone will tell you just because you adopt it doesn't mean you have to follow every single component within it.
Which I think's a problem.
Yeah, but I didn't want to adopt something that like the government uses that's 9,000 pages for our company. It just didn't make sense. So we literally created our own hybrid, and
Very cool. Out of what?
Yeah, it was a combination
Of how many frameworks?
I mean, if you include COBIT, COSO, including the PCI requirements and Sarbanes-Oxley, and even some ISACA stuff, probably 5 or 6. And there's obviously overlapping things between those. But what I wanted to get was kind of the basic blocking and tackling down to where we knew we were solid. And to me, I don't look at inside outside like I used to. In the old days, it was inside versus outside, and make sure you have a hard, crunchy shell. Well, now with everything being connected to everybody and all your third parties and your vendors, it's all the soft shell. I mean, a soft, squishy middle, and you've got to make it all solid.
Right.
And so that was our approach, was coming up with the tools that we need. And it was obviously risk-based. Everything nowadays is risk-based. So looking at what our biggest risks are and starting at the top. And that's what the tool that we use with Securus allowed us to do. We put in all these different projects, desires, and rated ourselves. And then decided, of course, most vendors want you to be a 5. Spend the extra $4 billion to make it totally automated. Well, in many cases, that's not necessary for us. So part of the exercise was determining what level is appropriate. And to me, everything needs to be at least a 3. It's got to be documented. It's got to be repeatable. But 4 with some of the metrics and the reporting, that's where we're getting to now. But what I want to do, instead of taking anything to a 4 or a 5, I wanted to get everything to a 3. And so we did that probably 2 years ago before we went public. And since then, we've been working on dialing up more automation.
So trying to get more to the 4 and 5. Yeah. Do you think that automation is the future of security?
I think you're going to have it. And when I talk automation, a lot of it is, you look at identity and access management.
Right.
The fact that, for years, everybody's managed that manually, and for years, we've all had mistakes. I mean, humans are going to make mistakes. Computers make mistakes, but not nearly as many as we make.
Right.
So one of our challenges is we have seasonal associates that'll work in the busy season for us, and then they'll go away, and then they'll come back the next year. So all the accounts, all the access they had, how do we manage that? Do we delete it? Do we just disable it and then bring it back on when they come back on? Because it's not always the same people. So one of the unique challenges here was that literally we could go up 500 or more associates in the spring and summer, and then they would go away in the fall and winter. And how to do that without missing people and having accounts that are out there that are active, that aren't being used, that are just targets for the bad guys to use, or for the guy that left to still try to log in, when he left the company. So moving to identity and access management, for us, it was Okta to create that and make it automated. So it's tied to HR. It's tied to them getting paid.
Right.
Now it just happens automatically.
So when HR disables someone, essentially takes away their whole.
Right.
So they don't have to send an email to security like, hey, we terminated, John Smith.
Yeah. And today we're doing that, and we're implementing Okta at this time to get to the point where it'll be automated.
Automated so that it's, one access. You hope that HR doesn't fire the wrong person and disable access to the wrong person.
Ironically, it's faster if they do it when you have something like that in place than it is now, because now it's all manual. So they deleted the manually. Now they go re-add everything manually, when if they did it through a tool such as Okta, it's just re-enable them, recreate them, and have them be recreated throughout the system, because it's based on, their access is based on their role. And so because you're in finance, you're going to get access to all of our finance tools and the core things.
Right. Do you find that, as you're evaluating different technologies that are out there today, is there anything specifically that you look at and you go, this is the future of cyber or information security? I mean, are you looking at one specific technology differently than others, or do you evaluate them all the same?
I don't think I look at them significantly different. I mean, if it's a completely different tool, yes. But I'm looking at something that I think is going to be working for the next 5 years, which in today's world, that's tough.
Right.
I mean, if you look at antivirus alone, the way antivirus used to work and the way it's working now, and I think that's one of the challenges is when you get with one of the larger vendors that's been around for a long time, and they're not necessarily doing the new and innovative things as fast as these new companies are. What do you do? And that's one of the challenges we're looking at right now, where we have a Symantec, but there's companies like Carbon Black and others that are doing things that are cutting edge. And I I personally don't like to be on the cutting edge or the bleeding edge because they're really close together.
Right.
I'd rather see it work for a couple of years, and then everything we do with a proof of concept. So recently we went with Proofpoint for our secure email gateway, and honestly, I've been more impressed with them than any other company I've worked with in years, just because of they scheduled the first quarterly meeting to sit down and talk about all of our settings and what we're doing, and then where we may want to think about making improvements. And
so they were worried about you implementing your product rather than just getting the paycheck
and getting the most out of it.
Right.
So we got what we wanted, but then they came back and said, well, you can also do these other 6 things that maybe you haven't had a chance to look at yet, and helping us get those. And every quarter we meet, and they sit down and give us statistics from the last quarter and a nice report that lays out all the things that have happened with your VIPs, your Doug Blacks and others, and all the attacks that have happened on them that they've been able to thwart. And then they look at the tools and the things they've released and show us where we could use additional services that they have, not going and buying another product or module. I mean, that's always in there.
Right. There's always the sales pitch, right? For an additional $29.99.
But this is more the stuff that you normally don't get, where they're like, hey, you already have this. You can enable this feature, and here's what's going to happen. And, let's do it as a test and see how it works, and then we can enable it across the board. And they'll work with us from quarter to quarter to do that. That's
great. I mean, it's always positive to hear positive vendor stories, because a lot of times you hear the, ugly truth. No, I don't want to say the ugly truth, but the challenges that you have in a sales security environment where, security folks are worried about security, and, the sales folks at the vendor are worried about hitting quota.
Right.
And in the middle somewhere, you got to find that middle point where you win and they win. And I hope for the vendors listening that's a tip to take is, maximize the value for a client. And, you'll speak proudly of them every opportunity you get, because Sean mentioned the same exact thing about Proofpoint in a few of our conversations. And so it's like, we're really happy with them, he goes, because they've given us a level of personal service that is, different and unique. They're looking to help us maximize what we've got. And that's very, very positive. I know you focus a lot on training.
Yes.
We talked about online training before, but how do you see, how do you measure the improvement outside of just the score? Do you look at do you look at repetitive mistakes? Do you guys evaluate an employee over a period of time?
We do, and I think one of the biggest insights for us was going with a tool called FishProof.
Right.
That lets us fish our own people. And it was depressing the first time we did it.
What can I ask you how many people clicked it?
It was a lot. It was a lot more than it should have been. And I was impressed how quickly in the second year it turned around. So they really got it. And honestly, with our field, it's a blue collar company. Some of these guys, I mean, it's amazing when you talk to them, because when it comes to agronomics and chemicals, they are brilliant people.
Right.
But when it came to first the computer and email and things, it was a challenge. And we all have the things that we specialize in. So at this point, literally, I'll probably get, 10 to 20 emails a week. And so my team will get them as well from different people that are running something by us saying, hey, I just got this email. It says it's from SiteOne. Is it really? And we'll look and check for them and let them know. And I'd rather do that and be, quote unquote, bothered by someone checking that than to have them just clicking on things, because that first time we did it, everybody clicked everything.
Well, people are click happy to begin with, right? Now when you do phishing exams, what's the percentage of people that fail it that actually report that they clicked on something they shouldn't have clicked because they were...
For us, it's automatic. So when they click, we know.
Oh, so they get the screen.
Yeah. It comes up and it tells them how they could have identified this email as a phisher, what the key points were that they could...
Right.
And they also get assigned training.
Yeah.
And they have to go take mandatory training within 2 weeks.
I dislike those.
We have a lot of people that dislike them.
No, I don't mind the phishing exam. I don't like the fact that you get the screen right away when you get it, because I don't think you learn from it, right? I actually think like the whole point is people are always going to be click happy, no matter what, right? And when you click on a phishing email, you don't get a screen that says, "Hey, I just phished you, ha 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 ha," right? I'm installing ransomware in your system. Good luck. Typically you have to be like, yeah, something's not right. And then they pick up the phone and call you, or, they forward you the email and go, I clicked on it. Right. And so I was, have you heard of the Atlanta Electronic Crime Task Force?
Wow. I mean, if it's the same one that was around in the 90s when I worked at Coke, then yes.
It's run by the Secret Service and FBI.
Yeah, I used to go to their meetings and Christmas parties. It was fun.
Right. So I go to their meetings all the time. And we did a meeting at a company here in Alpharetta, which I will not mention by name, simply because of the presentation he gave was very, very sensitive. And I don't want to put him on the spot, but I kind of asked him after the meeting, and I said, he gave a presentation and he was talking about phishing. And this is an organization of, around 6 or 8,000 people. So they're very, very large. And he went, listen, we got our phishing down to, the people who click it are anywhere between 10 to 20%. And the CEO went, great, so we have 1,200 people here who still click, right? So if you look at the number of 6,000, my question to him was, of the 1,200 that clicked, how many called you and reported the fact that they did it? Yeah. Because when you take that number, that's your real number of people who you realize had no clue that they went phishing. Right, that they fell for a phishing.
And they're willing to
learn. Because someone who clicked on it and goes, something isn't right here, and forwards it to, the mailbox that you guys have set up for it, or calls right away and goes, hey, I think I did something really bad on my computer, and allows you to kind of isolate the device, get it off network, clean it up, I think those employees should be rewarded as a cultural thing, because that promotes people to really go, hey, you did something that you're not supposed to do, but you came clean with it, which is great because you helped really defend the company later on, right? Yeah. So I know those phishings with the screens that pop up, and I go on a ramble every time someone tells me they do that, because I'm like, but it doesn't help, because if I'm, because sometimes the person who passes it the first 3 times won't pass it the 4th time. He knows that he clicked on it, but now he's getting the screen and having to go through training, where you would have known if your training was effective if he picked up the phone and said, I think I was duped.
Well, for us, we do manage the people, and we monitor who does it more. Like every quarter we do it.
Right.
And so on the next quarter, how many repeat offenders did you have? And those are the ones we actually have one-on-one individual training with my staff to spend time. So instead of electronic 15-minute online course, it's sitting down, talking through it. Because in most cases for us, there's 30 customers in the store, and they're lined up. They're loading trucks, they're unloading trucks, and emails coming in, and they're just clicking. And it's more of a, I'm so busy. And I think that's probably it for everybody. Nobody wants to read email all day, but they're clicking because there's so many things in their inbox to try to crank through them. And we've gotten them to the point now where at least they're slowing down. And we are unique because being business to business, it's amazing if you go in our stores. When people walk in, it's like, hey, Jim, hey, Sally, how are the kids? And it's like everybody knows everybody.
Right.
If someone walks in and no one says their name, it's a retail customer that happened to see the sign by the street, or they learned from their landscape guy that he buys from us and they came to buy something from us. And we sell to the public. We're not closed. It's just we don't market and advertise. And we're not on the corner of really busy streets. We're back in an industrial park.
Right. I mean, you guys, there's a location like right down the street here. Yeah. It's right next to my gym. It's the funniest thing. I'm like, I looked at my personal trainer today, and I was all like, we can go to SiteOne. I know the guys there, and they'll probably let us move rocks around for him as part of our workout.
You need safety shoes, a safety vest, and other things, but you could do it.
I mean, that's a pretty good, core workout right there.
Oh, yeah.
Just move some
trees,
dirt.
Some trees around.
I mean, think about it. Back then, that was like the workout. People are going to the keto diet, so now we're going back to gardening and farming and living off the land again.
The people that work in our locations that have nursery, there's one up in Tennessee that I spent about a week at, and those guys do the equivalent of like a marathon a week. And it's over 20 acres of trees, and you're unloading 18-wheelers full of trees from trucks, and you're turning around and loading those on customers to drive out. And these guys are just ripped. I mean, it's an impressive job for somebody to have because you'll be in shape.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at you. I'm thinking you're working at one of your places, man.
1 week in Memphis. That's all it took.
What? You sent me and Micah 1 week in Memphis. We come back with belly guts from all the fried chicken we ate.
Barbecue.
Yeah, yeah, barbecue and fried chicken. That'll just be it for us. Recently, the alarming trend in really breaches and cyber incidents has been third-party vendors. And you guys are looking at your business model, you guys have a lot of third-party vendors. How do you as a CISO kind of deal with some of the threats of third-party vendors to your own data?
We definitely have a process where we evaluate the vendors. And part of it depends. We have a lot of what I'd call more suppliers. So the folks that make the products we sell in our stores, that interaction is much less high risk. It involves pricing,
right?
But it doesn't involve PII, EPHI, and other things that can get you in serious trouble. So obviously we have a portal that we work with our suppliers with, and we're working to improve it. The big one is when you look at third-party, quote-unquote, cloud providers.
Right.
And one of the nice things, I say nice kind of in quotes, our company wasn't a big fan of cloud when I came on board. And I think we've changed that now, because there are services that you can obviously leverage in the cloud that make a lot of sense because it's very specialized. And these people do nothing but focus on this, so it's like the best of the best.
Right.
And we do have a trend at SiteOne of going for the best of the best. So when we're using a third-party tool for something in finance, we go for the best one, but we also look for, do they have a SOC 2? Any other certifications that we could need? If it's anything associated with credit cards, do they have their PCI certification for their application? So having those standards and requirements, I will say when I first joined, there really wasn't that list that we looked through there. It was more of a focus of, can it meet the business need, which you have to meet the business need. But then behind that, let's compare these vendors based on security as well. So that's part of the equation now.
As a B2B, really, and your core market is B2B, right? You guys deal with a lot of different companies. Obviously, you guys have not only, your payment information isn't just someone's, mom's credit card. It's mostly business cards and so forth, which carry a certain type of attraction. I mean, on the dark web, a personal card will go for like 5 cents at best. And you buy those in like the thousands. A business credit card, a PII that's been stolen, if you have the entire business file of that company, can fetch you anywhere from, $200 to $2,000, depending on the size of the company. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that people always, they're not focused on the B2B side like you guys are, which is so crucial, right? So everyone talks about, unfortunately, Equifax, but, Patrick Gall, who is part of the NTSC, we did a podcast a while ago, and he said, people keep forgetting that Equifax was a victim of a crime. Yeah. They're not it's like if someone breaks into your house and they blame you for it.
Right.
It's your fault they broke into your house. Don't have nice things in your home, right? Yeah. Just make your home look like garbage. Don't get SiteOne landscaping materials. Don't put nice trees and dirt outside. Don't have shiny grass. Just, look run down. Then no one will want to break into your home. Yeah. Where do you guys? What's your personal view on some of these latest threats, and then these third-party vendors who access your data, who essentially just take it all, who especially in sales and marketing and the B2B side, where you're trying to acquire more customers and land bigger accounts, and so there's all these new, I want to call them sales and marketing softwares. Do you guys have to deal with that at all?
Thankfully not.
Okay.
We've done a good job of minimizing the exposure of our customer data to third parties. When I think of the third parties we're doing business with, a lot of them are on the accounting or finance side.
Right.
We do a lot with demand management, the supply chain management. I mean,
Right.
At the end of the day, we're really a massive distribution company.
Right.
We're distributing landscape supplies around North America as fast and as cheap as we can, and the best ones we can find to give them to our customers. And so we have a large team that focuses on that, and we're using third-party solutions to help us, because when you walk into one of our locations, you don't want to go buy something and have it's not there, one of your hottest items. So we are leveraging third parties for that. But in that, they're not getting our customer list. They're not seeing any of that. They're just seeing our locations and our demand. When it comes to credit card data, that was one of my biggest concerns. What keeps a CISO awake at night? Credit cards. And so we are about 85% done moving away from our own custom in-house credit card processing solution
Right.
that we had to a third-party solution where we're going to be completely tokenized and not have credit card data at all in our locations anymore. And when that happens, I'm definitely going to do a dance and have a party and sleep better at night, because I still see that as one of the biggest risks. And we have an e-commerce site that's going live right now as well. The initial rollout doesn't allow you to buy online, but you can put everything in your basket, click on a link, and pick it up at the store, and then pay for it at the store. But late this year, early next year, you're going to be able to pay online. And some of the things that we've done, number one, we're using the same vendor to take care of the pay online, so we never get the cards.
Great. So you're kind of passing the liability almost.
Right. And then we don't allow, anybody can go to a retail and buy something. Well, with us, you actually have to have an account. And if you want an account, you have to apply. And by account, I don't mean a credit account, just an account to do business on the website. So we vet that it's a real business that wants the account before we set it up and give them access. And to me, that one layer of protection where there is a human touch today, the longer we keep that, the less likely we're going to have all the fraud happening on the website. And thankfully, we were able to put things in place for strong passwords, all the things. If we started our website 10 years ago, we wouldn't have done, and we'd been kind of like everybody else having issues with our security.
Right.
But we were able to put the security on the front end, even to the point of offering multi-factor authentication. So if someone tries to log into our site from outside of the United States or outside of North America, well, they must be on vacation because we don't do business outside of North America. So prompt them for two-factor if they're outside the U.S.
We're sorry. Why is someone from China trying to buy, $25,000 worth of landscaping products somewhere in Mississippi?
Yeah. And we currently today, we GeoIP block. So we block the known terroristic states. We block the known malicious countries that are on Spam House's list and Symantec's list. But we also block countries where we don't do business. And there's a lot of challenges in doing that because there are investors that are in Europe that are looking at your company. And so you have people from the business community saying, well, we want to open it up here and there. So what we've done is we started with what I call level 3, level of blocking. And when we find there's a business need in an area of the world that we currently block, we can unblock that area. But it's mainly, again, because we're North America, so it's easier. I don't have GDPR to deal with and other things. Hopefully someday we'll grow to the point where we do that. But our CEO and board have made it very clear that right now there's plenty of market in the U.S. and in North America for us to focus on.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I mean, plus, GDPR.
I don't even want to think about it.
You don't want to hear the shows I've had here about GDPR.
I wouldn't be able to sleep.
Oh, it's not about sleeping. I just think David Nolan from Aaron's was talking about, GDPR, mini GDPRs here in the States. California just did the California Privacy Act, obviously. And, people try to put privacy and security as one. And I'm like, please, let's separate privacy and security. Mm-hmm. Some organizations get it right. They hire a chief privacy officer. Let that person worry about privacy. Let us worry about security because those will protect the PII. We'll do our best to keep that data safe. But, It's today's a pain in the tail, especially with data breach notifications, right? 50 different notifications that you guys do. Do you guys actually do that in-house, or did you guys end up hiring someone outside in case of an incident for the breach notifications?
It'll be outside. Should that ever happen? Yeah, that's too much to manage internally.
Yeah, it's
what's nice is our chief legal counsel came from Home Depot, and he was at Home Depot at the time of their breach. So he
which one?
Completely. The big one. He completely understands and gets it, and he's been one of my biggest
advocates.
It's been amazing having him on staff.
It's great to have people who've actually been through it because they realize the pains of it, which is a little different from people who've never been through it who think it's a breeze. Oh, it's just a few bad headlines. I mean, Equifax's stock got punished for a little while, but now it's back to where it was pre-breach. Target's stock suffered slightly, went back, I think after, 8 or 9 weeks, it was already
not long anymore.
No, because here's the thing. Are you going to stop going to Target?
Most people can't.
You're
going to pick another vendor that had a data breach a little bit before that anyway, or more recent than that.
The thing about data breaches that's over exaggerated. It's like Equifax, right? People were like, "Oh, they're going to go to us." No, they're not. They're a B2B company. They're not going out. It's not like you walk into a car dealership and they try to run your credit. You go, who do you use? Equifax. I'm not buying a car here. You better use TransUnion or Experian because I don't want you to pull my Equifax. I don't want you paying them. Car dealership, it doesn't. They want to run your credit. They want to get you financed. They don't care, and neither does the consumer. He wants to buy a car. He doesn't care where you pull his credit from as long as it's the right score that gets him the right interest rate.
And do it fast.
Yeah. They don't care, and so it's I think the aftermath is that a breach tends to impact more of your suppliers, your vendors, negatively than it does you per se. because they're the ones that, if they're breached, they're done.
Right.
It's simple.
That for me, that transfer of liability, quote unquote, that we did to the third party when we implemented their point of sale capturing the credit card numbers. I mean, if anything happens now, it's going to be them.
Right.
And we're just one of thousands of their customers. So, they've got a much higher risk than we would have ever had.
Yeah.
To make sure they do it right and do it secure.
Well, they have to, and part of that has to do with, also the legal implications of it for the executives. Those executives could be held legally liable by an attorney general of any of the 50 states, if not the United States of America, if they're breached and it's proven to be a liability issue. What do you do for cybersecurity thought leadership? Do you follow anyone particular, or is it more a peer group thing?
For me, it's more of a peer group, people that I've worked with. I've been in security for a long time, since the 90s, working at Coke. And so I've got some good friends. And the time I spent at KPMG after the Coca-Cola company was amazing in making a good network. But I mean, Sean's a big proponent of using Gartner. So if we're going to do something, we do our research, and we have to show that we've done our research on top of our peers.
Right.
And then I rely heavily on some of our VARs that we use, like the company Securus I mentioned in Michigan, and Cumberland Group here. They've got some good experience. And to me, I love learning from others, like other companies that have learned, that have done it, and maybe things didn't go well. And when you have that relationship with them, you're going to get more information than you're going to get reading an article. So that helps.
Big debate about a cyber expert. So it's a question I ask every guest on the show. It's the hot seat question. I don't call it the hot seat question. Please ignore that if you're listening. If anyone realizes I don't have any obnoxious nicknames to any segment on the show, we don't do pretentious stuff on the show. Micah, no pretentious stuff in editing. So there's this big debate about cyber experts, right? So a lot of them are popping up on LinkedIn. I'm sure you get a ton of messages on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm a cyber expert on this, and I'd love to help you. And I ask every guest, what's your definition of a cyber expert? What do you make a cyber expert to be?
Well, number one, I'm really bad when it comes to social media. So
Good for you.
LinkedIn I haven't looked at in a long time.
Good. That's why you haven't connected with me.
Yeah, I always joke that if you see me on LinkedIn, I'm probably looking for a job. Because I really don't do it. I did social media when my kids were doing social media, so I could keep up with them and see what was going on.
Right.
But honestly, for me, I don't spend a lot of time on it. I don't network like I used to. Earlier in my career, I did a lot more, and I think I needed to then, because I needed to build my network. So I've not plugged in enough to know that there's a current debate going on about how you define a security expert, or that they're a cyber expert.
There is.
Okay.
There's a fine debate of it, and the reason for it is because you have what I like to call the people who operationalize cyber, the people who try to solve problems in cyber, the people who try to write books about cyber, and then the people who are what I like to call book smart cyber. Yeah. Right? So there's the ones who write the book, never operationalize it.
Right.
There's ones who operationalize it, like yourself, who are in the trenches fighting it every day. There are others who are trying to find solutions to sell you. Yeah. They're considered cyber experts in some sort of way. But like you said, innovation is key. And so when you want to look at the innovative products, and you want to hope that, some of the, the hackers are innovating every day. So you hope someone's innovating against what they're innovating for. And so that's kind of the debate. And we I don't want to say we joke about it, but we discuss it kind of in a way where we go, well, what makes someone an expert? Is it is it people who are operationalize it? And I think, the consensus so far has been, and I haven't done the official numbers yet. So I would have a poll. My problem is that we'll probably get the non-experts voting for experts status.
You could have two polls. Experts vote here, and then
the non-experts vote here. You're right. So the non-experts would be like no one, and then we'll send a special URL to special people to vote on this. That'll be the better approach. We'll make it public.
If I think about it, I think in my career, the people that I've worked with and for, there have definitely been people that fit the mold better as a consultant, if you will, that to come in, look at what you're doing and make recommendations, but there's no way they could actually do it.
Right.
But you need those people to come in with those ideas and being able to do that kind of objective view and see big picture down to narrow pictures in some areas and give you those recommendations. And I know some people that were unbelievable at that, and I would hire them, and it would not go well. And so they'd go back to the consulting world, and they would be rock stars, right? And then there's other people that you want operationally because they can make it happen every day. And I don't like having people on my team that are firefighters. I like the ones that put the fire out and you never have the fire again. And to me, those are the experts that they come in, there's a problem. We may have paid an expert from the outside to give us some ideas, but then they can implement those ideas and implement them in such a way that I don't have headaches from it and fires from it for years to come, that it's implemented and it's done. But I do think we need the experts on both sides. And I think it's important that the people in those roles understand that that's their sweet spot, and you need to stay in that sweet spot because it's painful when you try to get out of it.
That's a very well articulated answer of not offending either side. Someone would think you were coached on that answer.
It really wasn't, I
David.
I thought of when you were giving your talk about cyber expert and what it meant, because I really didn't know it was a debate.
Well, we did a whole episode on it. What makes a cyber expert? With Jeff Hancock, right? And Jeff was in the NSA and JSOC and been in cyber for 27 years on a government level, then worked with Microsoft and others. And we were having that debate because what we were running into, and, part of what we do is, CyberHub Summit, and I get these speaker submissions, and it kind of came out of that speaker submission. So I got about a ton of speaker submissions, and we're going through some of them, and I'm like, all right, you're definitely not an expert because you've never done cyber in your life, right? Cyber theory. And while theories are great, they're not practical. Right. They're theories. And I'm a fan of operationalizing. The whole reason we do this podcast, David, is because we're trying to help CISOs in the community engage and hear other ideas from other industries, because you typically stay within your circle of influence, and you don't really branch out outside the circle of influence. And most CISOs don't. The financial services CISOs, they're all together and kind of they're all in their little FSI SAC, and they have their own little groups, but they're not talking to the retail CISOs as often as they should be, and they're not talking to the healthcare CISOs as often. And so it's not an intentional disconnect. It's because we've segmented cyber by industry, and then we've made those circles segmented that way, rather than allowing you have a healthcare only IT cyber conference. Don't understand it. I understand the threats to healthcare, but I also understand that healthcare is impacted by credit card processing, by payment fraud, by insurance fraud. And so there's a lot of different aspects to it that don't just apply to securing a healthcare device at a hospital. While that's of crucial importance, because that's a life or death kind of situation. If someone hacks a heart, monitor or a heart pacer and knocks someone out, that's a lawsuit. That's a very big lawsuit to pay. Your insurance company's not going to be happy with, or your malpractice insurance for that matter. But then there's that whole of bringing everyone together across multiple industries, having them share information, and really trying to understand, because the threat landscape's the same across the board. Right. And businesses rely on others all day long, every day. Right. You rely on other vendors and so forth. And that's the whole point of us doing this and kind of trying to bring it all together, is trying to be like, listen, we understand you guys are in your respective industries and your circle of influence, and that's great. But, SiteOne's a great story of taking a company that was very small 4 years ago, that was not public, that was a blue collar, very little technology. Like you said, the classic small business, firewall, antivirus, and nothing else. And having a big name behind it, which was John Deere, and then building it to what you and Sean have been able to do 4 years later, which is making it a technology company trying to use technology to your advantage to have a competitive edge and then better serve your customers, which is the whole purpose of being in business. Definitely. And so, and this was a great story to kind of have, and we're running out of time here. So I want to say thank you for being with us, David. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
And SiteOne.com is the website, and David is the CISO of the company. And so I want to thank you for being at CyberHub Engage. Thanks for listening. We'll be right back after this message. The CyberHub Engage podcast is brought to you by CyberHub Summit. CyberHub Summit is hosting its second annual cybersecurity conference in Atlanta, Georgia on October 10th at the City Winery, featuring live cyber war games. Find out more at cyberhubsummit.com.